Loiter is a piece of work created to document Chapel Street. It comprises 5 separate artists' work, the overarching purpose of which is to show the true Chapel Street that is hidden by day-to-day activity. Nothing took place but the place. Loiter itself is inspired by the 1961 French movie Paris Belongs to Us, in which a group of activists plot a revolution that never happens, whilst walking around Paris criticising capitalism in the spirit of a true loiterer. The focus on Marxism is demonstrated most predominantly in the last artist's work. However, there is a running theme of existentialist philosophy both in the movie and the work. Jean-Paul Sartre, whom I believe was a key influence in the film, and who was greatly influenced by Karl Marx. Sartre's 4 basic principles, the vast majority of which I believe have been used in the collaboration. 1. Things are weirder than we think. This speaks to an idea of true perspective, where we strip away prejudice and routine of day-to-day life to see what is really there. 2. We are free. We have the ability to change how things are. 3. We shouldn't live in bad faith. Bad faith is living without taking freedom completely on board, due to society or religion, or even ethics. We don't see that we have a choice in a situation. 4. We are free to dismantle capitalism. The idea of money equals work is a type of bad faith that we go along with because we don't believe there is another option. Hansel and Gretel, created by Omid Asadi, is the first artist's work in Loiter located outside the Centre for Chinese Contemporary Art. The purpose behind this work is to make aspects of Chapel Street apparent that would normally go unnoticed. The focus of the work is the discarded chewing gum littering the paving slabs of the street. By using blue and yellow paint to draw attention to these discarded sweets, Asadi presents a before-dismissed aspect of the street. This work has a clear link to Sartre's first principle: things are weirder than we think. By drawing attention to something that is not considered by the commuters walking Chapel Street, the artist is stripping back the public routines and allowing them to have a different perspective on something that they see every day. However, even though the purpose of the work appears clear, its execution is in question. On the date the work was created, 30th of the 1st, 2021, there was a nationwide lockdown preventing many people from travelling up and down Chapel Street. This presents a clear problem for a piece of work that does not have a very long half-life. It could be argued that colouring in of the chewing gum may not have been the best way of presenting this unrecognised aspect of Chapel Street, as very few people would be around to witness it. Furthermore, when comparing the piece to an artist who shares the same purpose of advertising a dismissed aspect of society, such as Christo and Jean-Claude, the work lacks a certain creativity. We can assess that the purpose of the work is to be seen, so why not place it in the audience's eye line? Surrounded islands, Biscayne Bay, Greater Miami, Florida, 1980 to 83, was visible from most shorelines in Miami. Whereas, for someone looking up architecture of Chapel Street, Omid Asadi's work would be completely invisible. Perhaps some sort of chewing gum sculpture appearing at the eyeline of the audience may have presented itself more readily to the artist's purpose. However, if we consider the original purpose of Loiter as something that happens for a short time and then is gone, then these permanent sculptures would not fit. If we too consider the parameters for someone loitering, it must involve at least one person. Therefore, the artist is needed for this piece of work to fulfill its purpose. He is the aspect of the work that appears at eye height. This is apparent in the video documentation of the work. When we see people surveying the work, they are looking at him and not the trail that he has left behind. We can therefore assess that the work may fail in the purpose of presenting the discarded chewing gum, as the artist has become the focus, but has succeeded in conveying the overall purpose of Loiter, which is to move around in Chapel Street, allowing people to consider the place that they exist. Human Layers by Juliette Davis DeFaird is the fifth work to be exhibited in Loiter. Placed in an echo chamber inside Islington Park, its aim is to use its audience's own emotional connection to the past and the present, by directing each participant to think about a loved one who has lived before and how it would have felt for them to live in that time, as well as a loved one who will be around after you, and how your life will affect them. This not only allows the participant to connect to their past, but also allows them to think about the legacy that they would like to leave behind. This links to two principles introduced by Sartre. Principle 1. Things are weirder than we think. This relates to the artist asking the participants to imagine what it is like to be in the past, the routines and the social structures that existed back then, and then compare this to the present and consequently to the future. This creates a sense of perspective as to the ever-changing social constructs that bind our world together. Sartre believed that once we began to question these, we would then be able to see what things truly are beneath these routines. This follows into Principle 2, we are free. Juliette Davis DeFaird asks the same question, what is the world like? When talking in terms of the future, allowing the participants to begin to question how the future might be as opposed to how it is going to be, opening their minds to the concept that we can choose to change how the future will be. This idea is further tested when she suggests that in the future your relation is toasting you and thanking you for something that you did that changed the world for the better. The key point here is change, the idea that things don't have to stay the same. As opposed to Sartre's books, this concept is very delicately placed into the mind of the participant. Where this work breaks down is when it frequently talks about returning to the present day, Saturday, 31st, 2021. By suggesting a non-specific present day, this piece of work could have been universally applicable, but by staying true to the overarching concept of loiter, it creates an unpleasant speed bump which impedes the thought process. However, in order to keep true to the purpose of the collaboration, it must be this way, as to loiter is to be in a place for a limited amount of time, making anything universally applicable unacceptable. The assessment of this work is therefore very similar to the first works. By staying true to the overarching purpose of loiter, the work itself becomes damaged. In terms of presenting loiter as a concept, it works on multiple levels, talking not only about loitering in a physical echo chamber, but also loitering through time and imagination. The purpose of loiter is to present the entirety of Chapel Street in a physical sense, historical, philosophical, and even ethically. However, loiter only manages to convey this in part. It would take a lot more than 12 hours to present every individual aspect of an entire street. Given the timescale, I would say that aspects of the work are very successful. The concept of constant movement in one form or another was present throughout. However, in terms of the execution of the individual artist's work, they were for the most part crippled by COVID restrictions. It is not reasonable to produce a piece of work that can only be fully understood on the day when no one is physically allowed to experience it. It is equally ridiculous to expect the same effect through limited video and written documentation seen after the day has passed. The entire purpose of the work is to be seen and understood for a limited amount of time, but in terms of pragmatism, it would be better to pick a time when it could actually be seen. Despite this, both Hansel and Gretel and Human Layers do convey aspects of the purpose, but would have been made more effective through adjustments made around COVID restrictions, such as more documentation or creative social distancing solutions, hazmat suits, as opposed to simply continuing the project as is. Despite these restrictions, with these limitations in mind, And in comparison to what it could have been if rescheduled, I would suggest that it fails to achieve its purpose after the fact.